Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Voice in the Hollow. I'm your host, Miguel Ortega, and this to my side here is Emma.
Hello.
So, how's everybody doing? So, this week we had some catastrophic events happen. Um, just our lighting took a crap on the sequence we've been working on.
I broke it. I broke it.
Well, you broke it, but you didn't break it intentionally. It broke because every time we've used HDRIs with a lot of fog, things just get really weird. And we thought it was something that was resolved in the 5.0 official version, but it's still a problem that
Yeah,
it's still there.
so we're using a lot of fog on these scenes, and we're going past like the default mount. And if you ever do a lot of fog with
Go first, sorry.
a lot of fog with HDI, your light can break. And when it breaks, it just looks like the light explodes, like meaning it just gets overly really bright, and you can't really work that way. Once the light does break, like if you take it to that point, it just seems to break everything in the scene. And the only way to fix it is just to delete it and start it again. So if I go back and after I break a scene, I go back to my HDRI and my directional light, and I try to, and my height fog, and I try to just put the same values that I used before, it just will always constantly break. So I broke it because I was lighting some stuff. So I spent like 2 days just repairing everything because it all broke.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that's part of the process. So I'll show you guys what we're doing. So for those that don't know what this even is, so we're doing an animated film entirely in Unreal Engine 5. So I'll show you a few things. So there's going to be a couple shots here where the lighting just does not match at all, and I'll point them out to you. But they're the more yellow ones.
Window yangu ulichelewa tena.
So all the sound is temporary for now.
Hebu nionyeshe.
So this is a scene we worked on quite a bit this week. We already had it last time, but we made some changes to it.
Jamani.
So you can see this one, the lighting is all weird. This is a shot that we started doing last week.
Nitakuwa nimeurusha kwa nguvu sana. Siuoni kweli.
I'm not sure why that keeps showing up. This here, media pending. This has been happening a lot in Premiere for some reason, and I know what it means, but it usually is when it's trying to load up something that is a large file size, but this is not that case, and it's already rendered. If I just restart Premiere, it'll fix that, but that's happening a lot, so I got to figure out what that is. But I really like some of these newer shots. I think they look really nice.
That's the scene that broke everything.
Yeah, but we just have to get like this one to match a little bit closer here because you can see there's very little blue in the sky. You can see that there is a lot of yellow coming in from this side over here, but it just feels too Blade Runner 2049. We have to put some more blue in here, which we'll do that. So this is the shot that we were working on in the last stream. This kind of POV shot. So the camera here, I really wanted it to feel like it was a handheld, and it's her POV as she's walking. So we did the camera using a Virtue Cam, which is a plugin for Maya that allows you to just basically record your camera movement with your iPhone and transfer it over. And then this ground here, we did in Mixer. Hey, Jace Cover from Jamaica. And then wanted to go over like this right here. So you can see one of the things I really wanted. So we have a few issues here. So one of the things is when you have really thin geometry with a shallow depth of field, you get this ghosting. You could see it down here. We rendered it with very high quality, and we're still getting that. And I understand why that's happening. It's because nature of how depth of field is done in Unreal is like doing it in Nuke kind of. So it's fake. So it's having issues with when something goes very out of focus, it essentially becomes almost transparent. But if it's transparent, it doesn't know what is behind it. So because it's a post effect. So anyway, that's that. So you can see we're having that issue. But the water here, I think, works really well. Like these puddles, we wanted it to feel swampier and more like geysers or something, or like some sort of weird.
I have a question. I have a stupid question. How do you the ground material mixer?
Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. So I'll show you how we're doing this ground in a second. So, all right. So how are we doing something like this? You see, I am very happy to hear that someone appreciates it, because you don't, you can't begin to understand how difficult it was for us to find, with the resources that we had, a cast that all spoke Swahili. So that was something that was very difficult to do, but I felt it was super important. So
Yeah, I don't think that it feels right if they just speak like American English.
no, it was terrible. So I love that they speak in Swahili. So like this whole sequence here, when you hear them talking in Swahili, it's so kick-ass. So
Waumini sugu pekee ndio watakaozaliwa upya macho, na wale tu wanaokaa wana thamani ndio watakaovaa barakoa, kutenganisha walio na nguvu kutoka kwa wahafifu.
that in English would just sound so crappy. Let me just make sure that this is all yeah, okay, so it's good. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I actually appreciate it. Yeah, and I love that you commented on that, because yeah, we actually like to hear that. So anyway, we did that, and then this week we also just wrapped up all the cloth sim stuff on this. So you could see, oh, I'll show you another issue that we had. So another problem we have is you could see on some of these shots, the fire just turns off for one frame. Okay, so we're using the Action VFX Fire Pack, and I wrote to the guys from Action VFX, and they know we're doing this stream, and they've been awesome. So they've placed me as a feature artist on their site and everything. So they're awesome, and I legitimately love Action VFX. I think if you don't know about this website,
and it's not paid sponsorship, so that's
no, it's not a paid sponsorship. Like, I'm legitimately a cheerleader for what they're doing. I love them. And when I told them that I was having this issue, they called me, and I was on the phone with one of their guys that did all the stuff, DJ, who was amazing, and he's helping us. And we basically have to update to a newer version, so we were able to figure out the problem, but we have to update all the fire to a new version, and that should fix it. But so anyway, we resolved that. We still haven't applied it. And then the other issue that we had was some of the clothing wasn't all simmed, but now it's all simmed.
Sio mlinzi wa dadangu.
Yeah.
Si uende ukamtafute sasa.
Na mawindo je?
Ataungana pamoja na sisi.
Bona yeye si chui.
Kamwe usifurahie madhaifu ya dada yako. Menisikia? Sitakwambia tena.
Sawa.
So that's cool. So that's what we did this week, and then again, like the lighting catastrophe. So let's talk about this ground here. How long has it taken so far? 6 months so far. So let's get this water going. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up GAEA, and I could just go to new project. You guys have to be a little patient because some of this stuff takes a moment to load up, and when we render out these maps, it's going to take a second. So here's GAEA, pretty cool program. We could just come over here to the top and go to one of the default settings like Crater. Okay, so we have something that looks like this. Very straightforward. You could increase the depth, right? And you can see really when you're bringing up the depth, it's really just raising everything else and keeping the hole at 0. So there's a displacement here, and you can see it's just kind of warping it. I actually really like that, so I'm going to go with that. That's fine. Okay. There's other warps that we could put on top of this, so we could do a secondary warp. Yeah, there's no music at the moment.
All the sound is very
Temp, yeah.
super temp.
Yeah. So you can see we start getting a shape that looks much more funky. And the cool thing is you could just come over here to this like seed, and then you could just make quick variations really fast. Like, here you go, here you go, here you go. So you could have like a bunch of them.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Right? So we have something like that. So let's come down here and let's see what else I could do. So we could come over here to look dev, and I'll go to shatter, and you can see I'm just dragging it onto there. Now we have that, and I could go to carver. You can see that gives it more of like this kind of swirly. I'm not even sure I like that one. I think I kind of liked it before, although this kind of makes it feel a little bit more flowy, which kind of might work. I kind of like this one more. What do you think, Tran?
I agree. That one's a little. It almost feels like it should flow first.
Yeah, let's try that. So we'll do carver here, and then we'll do shatter. Yeah. And then we'll just run an erosion on here. So you can see pretty simple. So just a few nodes and you have something that looks pretty cool. Okay. Cool thing again is if you come over here, there's a few different ones. So you could go to volcanic. I don't like that necessarily. Impact. But you can play with this and get a bunch of variations. So let's go to that erosion. So we have this. Okay. So we like this. If you wanted to push this some more, you could go to auto levels down here. You can see that when you first do that, it looks terrible. Okay. But now it gives you this extra controller, which just basically allows you to dial that down. So that's nothing. That's the default, but now you're kind of like amplifying it. Okay, so if we like that, that's good. Right click, mark for export. Let's come over here to our output. Go to output. You have to mark it for export so that it knows it's going to export it from this point out. Let's come over here to our output. 32-bit EXR is fine. Where do we want to output it to? So I'll make a new folder here called Geyser. Okay. Under build. We'll go to EXR. 4K, that's fine. Let's come over here to Okay. So that's where everything is going to be written out to, and we could just go to start build. It's going to ask us to save it, so that's fine. Let's just save it in case it crashes. This is just going to do a sync, but it's fine because that's all we want for
Or you can
this piece.
you can export it at 8K. Plus, it's also not the entire floor. It would just be like a section. So we would never do like a big giant piece of land in Mixer. Usually we just create sheets.
Yeah.
And then you take them into Unreal and then kind of shove them together to make them look nice.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see here what it's doing. It's going through each one the nodes. So you can see the progress on each. It's one of the it says did you turn off your camera?
Yeah, I have allergies, so I've
Okay.
been kind of sneezing
Okay.
and muting myself.
So it says that one of our streams is having connection issues. Can you guys still hear us okay?
Well, I can see you're streaming okay.
Okay. So all right, well I'm going to keep going. All right, so we have that. Okay, cool. So we have that. So I'm going to close this for now, and let's just open up Mixer here. We get this program here. Let's just go to new mix, and we'll call this like guys or B or something. Guys or BB. Working resolution will keep this very low. So 1024 is fine. Now, don't worry about this. And for example, if you're like, oh, but I want this to be superhero, this is the working resolution. It doesn't mean that's your output resolution. That's what makes this program so kick-ass. Okay. So now we have this, and you can see it's telling you what size is this. So 2 by 2 meters. So let's just say 4 by 4 meters. Okay. All right. So now we come over here, and I could go to a new solid layer, right click, and go to add mask stack, and then come over here to top right, but on the left here, and go to texture map. Add image, and I'll just find that folder. So it was K, shots. There it is. Our guys are A, guys are B. And you can see here we have our output.exr. Okay. And when you look at it, it's going to look like this, and it's a little bit weird. Come back to the main solid, and now we could go to our height and bring this up. Okay, and you can see as we bring this up, we start getting this detail popping up. Let's bring this to 30. That looks pretty good. Okay. Go to my local library, and I could go to rocky ground. You can see when I do this, I'm not seeing anything, and I bring up the height, it's going to start doing this, and then you're like, wait a minute, you just got rid of everything you did. Come to wrap to underlying, push this down. Let's go to 35. Okay. Now we have that. You can see it's picking up the detail on that. It's bring it to 40. That's just to make sure that no little edges are being grayed out or whatever. So we have that. Now, if you look here, it looks low res. But at any point, I could come over here, texture resolution, 4096, and it brings it right back up for you to preview it, and then just go right back to 1024.
Yeah, because if you work 4K in that program, it will get really slow. So you can work lower resolution and still export higher. So you could export, you could be working 1K or 2K, and then when you export it, you could export at 8K, it will look just fine. So all the textures have really great resolution.
Yeah. So, okay, so we have that. So now I could add more complexity if I wanted to. So I could grab, just as an example, this gravel. You can see the gravel is down at the bottom. I could bring up the height again, do something like this. I could wrap to underlying again so it doesn't cover up the hole, right? Or else it's just going to do that, and that's kind of defeats the whole point. But you can see now we see a little bit more of the rocks poking through here. I could go to albedo on those rocks. Let's go to the rocky one here. And I know that this world we're building is very saturated, so I got to increase the albedo here. Then go to my gravel. I'm going to make that more saturated as well, but darker. More like that. And again, remember, we're working at 1K. I could come over here to liquid. Bring this down. Radius. You can see it starts blending it down really nicely.
It does fake water really, really well. Like it works really nice. What you get in here looks very close to what you'll get
in
Unreal.
It's ridiculously incredible, yeah. So you could see if I bring up the detail, it gives it some complexity in the water, some variation. You have surface and depth. And this is just changing the translucency. So you can see that makes it seem like clean puddle.
Can't see it so well unless you zoom in. Oh, so that makes the water clearer. But it also kind of has like a nice little noise map. So
Yeah.
it, like when you lighten it, you feel like you see like water trails.
Yeah. So you can see the surface, if I bring it down, it makes it a little bit more see-through and gives it complexity around these edges here, which is what you want. Because this just starts looking like, you know, nasty little things
Mud,
on the edge
yeah.
here. Yeah.
It doesn't work. This doesn't work as well in Unreal if you make it clear. It just looks strange. So
Yeah. So
we
it's
use the water more opaquely like that.
dirty water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much dirty water.
So you have your moisture threshold, and you can see as I bring this up, it starts just putting a little bit of water on the edges here, which looks really nice. Radius, that's way too much. Blur that. I kind of like it like that. Roughness offset. I kind of like it the way it is. And the darken. So I'm liking that. So I could come over here to the gravel here and go to add a noise. And you could see, since it's using the height to determine what is getting water or not, if I come over here and I increase this, it's going to have deeper holes. So there'll be smaller little puddles here. Just as an example, you could see if I were to do this, it looks terrible, but you could see how now the water is building up everywhere.
And the water is even. So
the height is the same.
yeah, the height stays the same.
Yeah. So I'm not crazy about this. I just wanted to show you. So I'll just delete this. Okay. So we have that. So let's just see what else we could do. So we have a little bit of gravel. Let's just add some more complexity to it. So let's do this canyon ground. Let's bring up the height. You can see we're going to have the same issue where it fills up the water. Let's make the albedo more red. I'm just doing this one totally custom, so I don't care about it necessarily matching our world. Wrap to underlying. You can see now we're getting,
That's getting nice breakup.
yeah. Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Okay. So we have that. Pretty simple. And let's take a look at it at 4K. So we have that. Okay. So what can we do now? So you can see we're getting all that nice detail. Everything looks good. We can export this if we want to. So let's just save this. We'll go to export. I'm going to select the path. So geyser B. Okay. I don't need to create a subfolder in there. That's fine. What maps do I want? Albedo, yes. Roughness, yes. Normal, yes. Displacement, yes. I guess.
Well, you want that to reapply, right?
Yeah. AO, don't really care for that. And metalness, I don't need metalness right now. So just these. Okay. What resolution do you want to export it out at? Now this is where you could go crazy. You could go 8K.
Which is like a lot for a ground piece.
Yeah, I'm going to do it at 4K just because I don't want to kill my machine because of the streaming. Yeah, we're going to talk about the OBJ in a second.
Yeah, so these are just texture maps, right? Everything was treated as a texture. So all the stuff you did in GAEA, it just produced a map. And then Miguel, you're going to generate geometry.
Yeah. So we'll go through that whole process right now. So, okay, so the maps are exported. So I'm just going to quit this. And what I'll do is I'm going to open up Mudbox here. So you could do this in any program, but I'm a Mudbox guy. But whatever, if you want to use ZBrush, that's fine.
Well, Mudbox is older, but it also tends to have less artifacts. So whenever I've done what Miguel is doing in ZBrush, usually the edges get really jacked up, and Mudbox does it cleaner.
Yeah.
It also handles the 32-bit EXR really well, whereas not necessarily slow in ZBrush.
Okay. So one step that I'm skipping out here because I'm just lazy is this plane. Of course, there's a plane in here, like a default mesh plane. But you want to select or import a plane that is the size that you want it to be from Maya. So a good example is what I actually did is I opened up the character, loaded it up in Maya, and then created a plane, scaled it up to be the size that I want this to be, exported that out, and that's what I'm bringing in here. So it just looks like a simple plane. It looks like, why didn't you just use this? And it's because of the scale. I just want to make sure that the scale is what I want, and that's it right there. Okay, so I'm going to subdivide this guy like 8 or 9 times. You can see we're at 24 million polygons or something to that effect, 26 million. Okay. UVs and maps, sculpt using new operation. So sculpt using meaning it's going to grab a texture map and apply it onto the model, thereby sculpting this plane with a map. Sculpt using map. New operation. Select the model, your mesh plane here, and now let's select the actual displacement map. Okay, so here's the displacement map that it has given us from whatchamacallit, Mixer. Bring that in, and I'm going to press go. Give it a second. So you might be asking, why would you try to recreate the geometry if you could already export it out of GAEA, for example? You can export the geometry out of GAEA. The thing is, if you export it out of GAEA directly, the water it's not gonna exist, so it'll still have the breakup of the rock. So by doing it in here, we're gonna have that. It's gonna look like what it looked like in Mixer. So you can see it applied it, and it looks very subtle. You can see that it's created a new layer called displacement, and there's now a strength of 100. You can see if I turn this on and off, you can see the displacement appears. You can just go to that strength and increase it to 400, 800.
It is really precise too.
Yeah. So that looks about right, because remember, I have to keep in mind that there is the water. So if I over crank it, maybe some of this high frequency stuff is going to be a little too spiky, but that looks good. Okay. So now that I have this, I could, if I wanted to, import the color just to see what it looks like. Give me 1 second. I thought it was something else. Okay, so let's go to my assets here. Geyser, here it is. And you could bring in, for example, the albedo, just to make sure that everything lines up. Okay, so there's no specker or anything on here, so I could import the roughness. There is no roughness here. It's gloss, so it might look funky. It'll do the opposite. Yeah, it's not going to look right. But you can see that everything is lining up correctly, which is just the point. I don't need to work on those maps. Okay, so now that I have this, if I look at my UVs, you can see it's just basically a plane. That's fine. UVs and maps. I don't have to export the model, or sorry, the displacement map. I'm just going to export the model. So I'm just going to go to File, Export Selection. So there is a decimation tool here. Reduce mesh. And it's actually pretty good. Unfortunately, it doesn't preserve the UVs, so it makes it pretty useless. So File, Export Selection. So there's my geyser B. So let's export this as geyser B. I export that. So give it a second, or more than a second. It's going to take a moment. So what's the plan now? We're going to bring this into ZBrush, decimate it, and export it out. So again, I don't mind having a bunch of programs opening and jumping in between them, but if you just want to do it all in ZBrush, it's totally fine. I just like the layer system in here. So if I wanted to make any changes, it's easier for me to use this. But there's nothing wrong with doing it in ZBrush. So it's exporting the model. The model is 26 million polygons, so you know it's not the fastest thing to export. It's a heavy model. So we're at 70%.
It always feels way longer when you're trying to do this when you're teaching or streaming.
When you're streaming.
Yeah. Well, I think even longer when you're streaming.
Yeah.
Versus teaching.
But you know that's the reality of this art form. As it almost feels like file sizes seem to be the bottleneck now. Like I remember before it was like processing time. Now it's like file sizes. The file sizes are just getting astronomical. So, okay, so that's out. So let's just open up ZBrush. Okay. So there it is. It's going to take a second again. If anybody has questions while this stuff is happening, feel free to ask. And if you're watching this after the fact and you guys are enjoying the stuff we're doing, make sure you comment so we know that we're not talking into a void. Because sometimes it feels like that. So we appreciate the comments. So, okay, so there it goes. There it is. So I'll just go to my Z plugins, decimation master, keep UVs. Keep freeze borders, I guess, is fine. I haven't noticed much of a difference. And then we'll go to pre-process current. This is going to take a moment. So there's going to be a few minutes. But what it's doing now is it's basically analyzing the mesh and figuring out how it could decimate it and still retain the details as good as possible. And the reason is actually the way quads work are not very efficient, right? It's evenly dividing the model everywhere, but certain areas clearly don't need as much resolution as others. For example, the flat surface of the water does not need as much resolution as the high frequency, bumpy little rock area. However, if you just treat it the way ZBrush and Mudbox deals with geometry, everything is evenly spaced and what is the word I'm looking for? Quadrangulated. Yeah, there it goes. So it's a split evenly. So, you know, it's 4, 16, et cetera, et cetera. So it starts getting really heavy really fast. So this is going to take a moment, but it's analyzing it, and then we'll just decimate it, which basically means it'll give us a lower res model that looks almost identical, and that's what we're going to bring into Unreal as a nanite piece of geometry. What if it was a large piece of ground? It's exactly the same method. The one thing I didn't do, so that's the question here, is what would I do if this was a large piece of ground? So Tran is going to cover that in a second. A very similar pipeline to what we just did here, however, completely different. and that's using UDIMs. And but for this, the way we would probably do this and the way you should do this, which I did not do here, is you want to kind of make the ends bend down a little bit, right? Not keep them perfectly straight like this. And the reason is by them being kind of going down, you could smash another piece into it and they'll just blend into each other. But if they're perfectly straight, it's like having perfect papers lining up to each other. You're going to get a clear line. So just kind of make it bow down a little bit, and then you could just smash them into each other the way like Megascans works. So that's something that I didn't do. I could just show you real quick what I mean by that when this is done. So this is still going to take a few more minutes. You can see it's like 20% done. So normally it's not a big deal. It takes a few minutes. Go get coffee. Go, wash your face or something.
Yeah, but this is probably the biggest bottleneck we have. So processing, like what Miguel was saying, and then importing it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just dealing with files that are just gigantic. So, you're dealing with 26 million polygons. I don't even think that this is going slow because the processing is that much. I just think there's so much data that it just takes forever. Or just importing this into Unreal is also going to take a moment because, again, you're dealing with, this is probably going to come down to like 4 to 6 million polygons. So it'll be much faster to import it, but it's still going to take a moment as it converts it to nanite. That being said, the fact that we're bringing in 6 million polygon models and tiling them and being able to work on it as if nothing.
Yeah, this would be like impossible.
It's just crazy.
So if we go back to like the way when we were rendering things, yeah.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even work this way. We probably would be using displacements, but it would still be really, really slow.
Yeah.
Displacing is slow. Gives you a huge render hit. So yeah. And then it would take 10 minutes to see it.
Yeah. You could also see why we decided not to export it at 8K because we're getting a ton of detail. And at a certain point, you are going to get diminishing returns on the displacement side of it because, sure, you might have an 8K map, but you're not applying it on a subdivided enough model to really give you that 8K worth of detail.
Yeah. And I don't think, even though we can load all this stuff, I think you still don't want to be greedy and make everything 8K. It would just be really slow.
So we're at 55%. I would show you something in the meantime. Maybe Tran can show you something in the meantime while this.
Yeah, so I can show some stuff because it's actually taking a while.
Yeah, this is taking a while. So Tran will jump and show you guys some stuff. So what she's showing you is done exactly the same. So it is using the exact same GAEA nodes that we talked about today.
Yes.
It's literally the crater node. But now you could see that it is a massive environment, and this is one single crater, but it's gigantic. So yeah, try and take it.
Yeah. So Miguel, this was one of the first scenes that we had that Miguel worked on. He made this ground floor, this crater, all in GAEA, and he is, like he said, the same exact method, except that he textured it in Substance. Well, before I dive into it, I'll just show you a few screenshots. So what's changed in this here is, well, I've basically been working on relighting it. Let me just open my sequencer.
Relighting it and adding more detail to the textures. This was one of those scenes that, even though I modeled this, I always knew that it could be better, and usually when I want something to be better, I just give it to Tran, and she makes it better. So.
Well, we kind of do that to each other.
Yeah.
So that's how it usually happens. which is not a bad thing. We get 2 eyes on it. So, you
4
know,
eyes.
4 eyes, two pair of eyes,
Yeah.
which is really important because sometimes you're working on something so long, you just start making it ugly and you don't realize that.
Which happened to us with the first set we built. Yeah.
Yes, although we were both in that hole. So let me load a couple of sequences. So this is like the main kind of shot what you would see when Koa arrives, and it is very different. Let's come over here. The lighting has changed. It's much more dramatic. It's much more atmospheric. And one of the things that we were kind of struggling with was just trying to make it feel gross. So before, we've done a couple versions of these vines. This is the final version, but it has been multiple versions. And what I decided to do, it's still not quite feeling as gross if you're looking at it, is I put some decals in here. And what that's doing here, if you can see it, is it's giving me this kind of really specular breakup. So it just feels kind of like fleshy and gross, which is what we're going for, right? Just kind of a little bit much more noisy.
Yeah.
The decals here.
This is the hollow, right? This is
Yes, this is
the hellhole.
the hellhole, basically. Let me pop out of here.
So we wanted this to look as evil as humanly possible.
Okay. So here you can see I have a decal. And decals are really simple to make. You can go over to place actors, go to which one here? This fancy visual effects one. And you can just create a decal like this, right? What you do want to be careful is your surface should be pointing at the arrow. It will still work even if you don't do it, but your normals will be messed up.
Stretch.
Well, it would just like look backwards. So it would just be super
Oh,
jacked.
I see what you're saying. The arrow.
Yeah, this arrow
yeah,
here.
Yeah.
Which sometimes, I know I'm kind of stupid, but I get confused. Like I lose the arrow. So I'm always really careful with that. The bounding box is what controls the projection level. So you can also scale this, right? And it's kind of handy like that. You know, you could also kind of do something like that and you'll get something like this. As far as how you use it, once you place your decal in your scene, you just have to load a material. And the material is not too complicated. I'll just show you what it looks like. It's pretty standard. So here's my decal master, right? I have a normal, a mask that it reads, and just a color like this. And then all these extra things are just giving me more control to color correct it. What you do have to do in particular to your decal though, just maximize this, is when you create a material, so it's a basic material, you have to remember to set your material domain to D4 decal. And my blend mode is set to translucent. And that's about it. And that's it. And it should work really well. And you just put it into the material decal here. So once I have the material, let's go over here, which is my instance over here, which I've been messing with. I need to redial. I could have something like that, right? And what that's giving me are these kind of stains of blood, like this. See it moving around. And from far away, it doesn't seem like so much, you know, and it kind of blends with the vines a little bit more. And it just gives me this kind of nice specular breakup. I'm going to delete this one because I don't want to keep it. Also, I just realized there's this problem deleting sometimes. When you hit delete, it freaks out like this. I just went, oh shit.
Yeah, our single biggest cause
go.
of crashing, there's two things, is saving
and deleting.
and deleting.
I would say saving is like the worst. So,
But you never know. You could literally like create a sphere by accident, press delete, and think like, oh, there's nothing connected with the sphere, and it'll take 5 minutes to delete that sphere.
Or it will crash when you delete.
Yeah.
But I think the worst is when you're saving because you're trying to save, and and then you just don't know what's going to happen. But here you can see what this looks like without these decals here. So they don't really quite blend, and it does add to the wetness and the grossness of the scene. Let me show a few more angles that I have in here. I'll just load. Let's load this one again. So
And this
we
is
have-
all part of our relighting all the stuff we had done before.
You can see my
for
cameras
the
with
intro
decals on them.
sequence. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the relighting. Just, I think the set always looked good, and I think the old lighting, I actually still like it. But we wanted to be really continuous with what we're doing, right? This one has, her approaching it. And then when I'll usually pass this off to Miguel, and then he'll fine tune it to what he wants to look like shot. So nothing I do is totally final, but what it does is provides a pretty decent base. I did find some other angles, like I really like this one. It's not actually a shot yet, but maybe, Miguel will use it. So I'll usually, have his shots, and I might place a few new wide shots that I think look good. And then I'll pass that to Miguel. Now, let me just snap out of this and let's talk about how I dealt with this hole. So previously, this terrain here, let me just hide this stuff. Let's hide the vines.
I like the lighting on that thing. I think it looks cool.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Previously, let's see if I can zoom in tighter. There we are. Miguel had just taken this entire terrain and he textured in substance and had 4 UDIMs on it, which is a lot. Now,
For substance.
4 substance.
It's not a lot at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but it came out really, really low res. So when you got this close to it, which we don't plan to get this close in any particular shot, it just
Yeah, we do. When
Yeah,
there's-
but
there's
they'll
a
be-
couple. Yeah.
they'll be out of focus.
Yeah.
But you're never staring like this,
No,
right? That's what I
no.
mean.
We're gonna get close.
Yes.
Not
but,
that close. Yeah.
like there's no shot like let's stare at the dirt.
Yes.
Kinda
yes,
shot?
Yes.
So when you got this close, it started getting really blurry.
Yeah.
Now we could increase the UDIMs, but Substance doesn't handle UDIMs very well. It can do it, but it's not very great at it. And the scene just got very slow, and it was just really hard to texture. The other option would be to do it in Mari. I really don't want to do this in Mari. It takes too long. It's kind of slow. Mari is really great, but I don't particularly want to deal with that. And we also don't know if that will fix the problem. We still hit a limit of 4 UDIMs is not enough for this giant piece, right? So what I did instead is it's all driven by materials. So if I take a look at this here, located here, it's all being driven by mask. So if you look at, let's say, this section here, I'll just tint this so you can see what I mean. Okay, and you see my blood. So I have a blood section. I have a sand, and then I have like kind of a rock base. So my sand is like this kind of gray area, and my blood is this area, and my rock area is this area. So basically 3 textures. And what's happening is I'm just tiling them across. So if we look at this area that I colored, just so you can see it, I do have this Megascan texture. Let's just take a look at this one right here. And what I'm doing is I'm just tiling it across in order to get the resolution. So, I could bring it down to 1. You can see how large that is. And then if that's, I find, falling apart, I can increase the tiling of this. They say something like that. And then this way, we don't have to worry about it ever falling apart. So it is just one tileable set being tiled in this area. If I go to the sand, which is this kind of gray color, I can do the same thing. So I can go to my sand, and change the tiling. Try to zoom in. Right? And then this way, I just have really nice resolution.
Infinite resolution.
Yeah. And the same thing with my blood. So then here in my blood, I have, kept it more simple. It does look kind of rocky, but it's okay because we're kind of at a distance. But you can see I can tile this. And then I also have a controller just for this area. So you can see in this area, I can kill the normal strength. If it's too rocky, it won't really look like blood. So usually very glossy surfaces, like that are liquidy, tend to be a little bit smoother. For me, what I do is just kind of look at it at a distance and go, well, how strong do I want that to be? So I keep it a little bit lighter to maybe something like this. Okay. And then I also have a mask tucked in here into the master material. Now, if I pull this up, let me find the parent. What I have is material that looks very basic like this. And I'll show you how to set it up. I will show a failed material. So I have K-Fit master failed. Originally, I started setting up like a regular kind of material, but then I realized that it just got out of control. So you can see here, like my graph is like getting ridiculous and it's not even complete. So here was my albedo blood section, right? So my blood material, and here's my sand, my second material. And then here was my rock kind of breakup. And this is only for the albedo. And I was getting a chain this long. And I don't even have my normal or my roughness. So it just looks like a disaster. I started doing it and then I'm being stupid. So I caught myself and then I saved this so I could show you why you shouldn't do it like this. I would just end up with something really ridiculous that's really hard to manage, right? And you would have just crazy wires crossing everywhere. And then when you look at the graph, you're like, I have no idea what's going on. So organization becomes a big problem. So I'll show you here. Let's start from scratch. I'll move this over in one moment. Okay, here. So what I did here instead was, let's just create a material here, right? I'll call this master land demo, so I know what that is. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a material instance like that. Now, what I use instead to keep me organized and not have this be insane is material function. So I'll call this MF, so I know that's material function. A, right? And I'll just start with this one here. So I want to put my first texture set in here. My texture sets will be divided into material functions. So again, instead, what that means, instead of trying to throw everything in here, each material function will represent one material, okay? So I'll end up at the end with 3. I'm only going to do 2 just as a demonstration, because if I do 3, it will take too long. But I use 3 material functions, 1 for each set. Now in the first set, here, let me just grab some textures like this. And I want to set this up, with my albedo, my normal, and this is my roughness here. Now, let's just do some basic stuff. And I'll start getting more complicated at the end. I'm going to create a multiply. And a color tint. So that I can tint this. I'll call this a albedo tint, like that. And I'll set this to default as white, which will have no effect. And it will multiply by this. So let's just see how that looks. So I'll preview this so you can see, I could tint this red, for example, right? And again, white will have no effect. And then my normal, I'm going to use flatten normal. And this will give me my normal strength. I'll create a parameter. And I'll call this a norm strength. Now, I think my naming kind of sucks. So usually I will just come back and rename this stuff. Okay. And then this one here, I'll just keep this basic. So I'll create a multiply. And again, we'll create a parameter, and this will be a rough multiply. Okay. Now what I'll also do is I'll turn these into parameters. If I turn them to parameter, I can actually replace them with different textures. Otherwise, it would just be nested in my material and I can't do anything else with it. So I'll convert this to a parameter, and I'll call this a albedo. And here, naming is actually super important because it will just be like a disaster. So this will be a normal. And this will be a rough. Okay. Now, once I have this, what I'm going to do here is I do want to tuck all this into this output result, right? So I need this in order for my mass material to actually read all this stuff. But if you notice, I have just one output. So I can't do that, right? Otherwise, all of my other textures will not be read. So what you can do here is you can create a material attribute. And I'm going to use a set material attribute. Okay. And in this node, you can see down here, let me maximize this. I can add array elements. And I'm going to add 3 because I have 3, right? I have a base color. I have a normal. You know, I do actually need a spec. Let's come back here. Let's set this to specular, roughness, and then one more, which is normal. So I do use the specular a lot for control. Now the specular, I don't always have a map. So normally it would just be a parameter like this. So just be a spec, right? And then default, I'll start at 1. Okay, so here's my spec, really simple. Now, once I have this, I can just plug this into my base color. My spec goes in here. And then my roughness goes here. And then my normal goes into here. And now, because I have this plugged all in one, I can plug this into here. And I'm just going to save this. Now, this is not as complex as I would get. Normally, I don't build things really complicated at first because I just want to make sure it even works first. Like, I just want to make sure it functions before I get so complex I don't know what I'd made. Let's close this. Let's close this. Let's close this. And let's go into my content browser. I'm going to go back to my material. And I'm going to load up my master material. Okay, so this will be my master material. And I want to pull this function that I just created that has my 3 sets. To do that, you're going to create a function, material function call. And it says unspecified function. And if I go here, I can search it up. So I label this MF A, so I can find it easy. And now I can, plug this in. Now, to simplify things more, right? Because if you notice here, I have in my master, I have all this information. It's all into one node. So I could break this apart, but I think that's kind of a pain in the ass, right? If I just take this and use material attributes, on the material. So I checked use material attributes. There's a little check mark right here. I can just plug this straight in like this. And let's hit save. Okay, so I'm going to jump back here and I'm going to look at my instance, which is really dark for some reason. And it shouldn't be so dark. Give me 1 second. So I am doing something funny here. It's my base color and my spec. Oh, I put my normal in the wrong slot like a genius. So yeah. I had my normal and my roughness and my normal. So it was confused. Hopefully this will fix this. Let's save. There we go. So that fixed that. Okay, so now you can see here in my material function here has my textures. I have my master material reading this material function. It looks like this, right? And here's my instance, which I always have open so I can check to see what happened. Now you can see all the parameters I have here. So I have my spec, it's really high, right? But I like to have that control. And I have my roughness, and I can change my normal strength. So if I set it to 1, usually we'll flatten that out, and I could replace these. Now the problem with this is that it's not very organized. And if I load multiple, if I had just one material set here, I could leave it like this. So I can understand what I made. But as I load more, it's going to be so complicated. I won't understand where anything is. So to do that, what you want to do is just organize the parameters. And you can do that by creating groups. So I usually will start with a number, because it goes alphabetical, right? So if I say 1, 0, 1, that will pop up before 0, 2. And I'll call this group 0, 1A, right? And then every single one of these parameters have to have the same group. Okay. And then let's put this in the same group here. And then this will be in the same group. And this one is also in the same group. Let's save. Now, if I come over my instance, you can see here it says 0, 1A, and everything is sitting a lot more organized under one section. Now, the next thing I could do and you really should do this because it gets complicated, is I can number them in the order that they appear. So if I want my maps to pop up first, maybe my albedo, I set that to 1. I can make my roughness number 2, and then my normal is number 3, right? And then here, 4, 5, and actually these are not final numbers because my thing is not completely set up. 6, for example. And then if I save this here, it will show up in the order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do here is I should just set this up the way I want it to be. It's all working. I don't have multiple materials yet, but you can see we're reading it okay. At this point, I know that I want to have more complexity in this. And it's not that much more complex. I want to have a saturation control, which is called desaturation. So I can desaturate this map. I want to have a brightness control, which is just a multiply. And then I want a contrast, right? Some people use power. I don't necessarily like how that looks. So it's not really contrast or decontrasting. So I'll use cheap contrast RGB. So I have these 3. Now I could create single parameters for each one. We can connect this like this. Okay. And then this, I'll plug into this chain here, which will look messed up because I don't have anything here. Now, I could do single parameters, but what I can do instead is I can do something like this, create a color, convert this to a parameter, and I can name this as a albedo controls, and I'll set this to white. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm going to use this is it just looks more organized. So I can call my first one saturation in my red channel, and then you can see it pop up right here. It says saturation. My green channel will be brightness, and my blue channel will be contrast. And this channel will control that. That will control brightness, and this will control contrast. And I'm going to save this. I didn't group this. So let's just put this as number 4 too. That's also 4. So they can have the same priority. They'll just look a little different. Now here, I didn't want my alpha. Control through there. Let's see, why does it look like this? Doing something stupid here. Let's just preview. Okay, so I don't want to desaturate that. So we can start that at 0. Let's preview this. Okay, so my brightness will be controlled by this slider. So at 1 should be default. And it's probably my contrast that's breaking everything. Okay, so my contrast, I should start this at 0. So it doesn't have any application. Let's save it. And let's just reset these values. There we are. Okay, so now I have a brightness control, a contrast, and saturation. And the spec is kind of crazy. So I'm going to set my default spec to 0.5. Let's save that. And then that is going to just be my default number. And I could reset my albedo control here. Reset this. There we are. And let's just organize this. Everything. I hit C. I'll just call this albedo. C, this is rough. Hit C again. This will be normal. Okay. And I think I'm fine with my specular. So let's just save. Now I do need a way to tile all this. So I want to create a texture coordinate, which will give me some tiling control. Now you can't actually convert this to parameter. If you right click, there's none of that. So what you need to do is create it through a parameter outside of that. So I'm going to multiply this. Now I can put just one parameter in, and that would drive the U and V, right? But if I want to have separate control of U and V, what I need is an append vector. Plug this in here. That splits it to 2, A and B, a parameter set. So I can call this A U tile, and let's start this at 4. Copy it, paste it, and call this V tile. And plug this in here. And to group these. So So all my parameters should open. And I can put this at 30 default, which makes them pop up. And let's plug that in here. And sorry, zoomed out really far. And make sure that there we are. Let's hit save. Now let's check if it works. There's no point like for me to set up the rest if these are broken, because then I'll just have a big broken mess. Okay, so everything is functioning. They're all sitting under 01A, right? And I have a lot of control, which kind of looks confusing, but I'd rather have it than not. Let's say this. Okay. All right, so this one works. Now, like this. And this will be my second set.
I'm getting a message saying that our stream is having connection issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have it so much on my end. But yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, all we can do is keep going. Okay, so this is material function B. Now, I can leave the same materials in here. It could be that lazy. The one thing I can't do is have the same exact names because they'll just override each other. Question, how often do you get to reuse materials like this? For like really basic stuff, like if this was a rock and I had multiple rocks in my scene, I can do it for every single rock or like a regular object. For this cave pit, it was only for this one in particular. If I have, because I don't have that many assets like this, but if I had multiple assets that needed this thing, I can use the same master material for each one. But in our case, we only have one object that has this, but a lot of our other objects do have custom built materials that I reuse for almost everything in my scene. Like the characters are using all the same master material, right? And then the terrain are usually using the same master material. I don't use well, we do have some of the Mega Scans materials that we bring in from Bridge, but they tend to break all the time. So the way they're set up, somehow they always break. And what I mean by break is I don't know why, but the normal map always pops off. So it just stops working. And then our normal maps and roughness maps are not being read, which makes them look really funny. So I ended up having to make our own because they constantly break. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is come back and rename everything that says A to B. So I'm just going to copy capital B underscore. And I'm going to rename it all first because I have to do one task for everything at the same time. It's the only way for me to be organized. You can, do whatever works for you. The second step would be to put it its own group. If you don't do this, this will not read because they will just be confused. So it won't pop up in my material instance. Okay, so I renamed everything to B. The next thing to do is to change the group. So I don't have to change my priority if I set them up correctly first. So I'm going to call this 02B group. And once I create it, I can select it in the dropdown. Again, I have to do it one task over everything. This is where I usually mess up because I guess I'm not organized enough. I feel like I'm pretty meticulous, but maybe not enough. Okay, so let's save. And if I screw up this here, we can fix it. It would just pop up in the wrong place in the material instance. Okay, so I think everything here is good. I'm going to save this, and we're going to go to our master, and I'm going to create another function call. It already knows for some reason, maybe because it's the last thing I worked on. So it's already automatically loaded in B. So now I have 2. Now, normally we would use a lerp to blend this. So you can see what a lerp is. It's basically a blend node, but it only works for one texture set, right? So just to kind of demo what lerps look like, say, for example, I'm not going to use this in my main one, but for anyone watching, they're like, what the heck is that? Let's say I have this map here, and let's make this one green. I guess I didn't make it green. There we are. Okay, this is all throwaway. If I create a linear interpolate, which is a lerp, so if you type lerp, it won't work. I can mix these two together, and they will mix based on an alpha map. And I'm just going to throw in a mask here. Okay. Let's preview this. So without the mask, it's just combining both colors and getting yellow. So green plus red equals yellow in the color wheel when it comes to digital, right? So in real life, if you had paints, green and red would give you brown, but not in the world of CG. You actually just get yellow. Like, let's make this more saturated. And the yellow is more intense. Now, if I grab this and I plug it in here, you can see it's doing it according to this mask, right? So I can do something like that, or at least this is the same concept. But again, this only gives me one map set. So this, if I use this, it would only work for the albedo. And if I had to do this for every single one, the albedo, the normal, the roughness, the spec, my material is going to turn like this again, right? So I don't want that. Now, what we can do is we can create a blend material attributes. And this is equivalent to this lerp, except it does the entire material set. So I won't have to break this out. Okay, and I can just grab this. Let's disconnect that. And I'm going to put this through A. This is going to be B. And I'll connect my alpha here. And plug that into my material attributes. Let's hit save and cross my fingers. Hopefully I did not screw this up. And I will know when I look at my material instance. So it's not, okay, so this is where I messed up the naming. So see, this says B albedo. So I didn't change the group. So I changed that to 02 B. And when I save, you can see they're all popping up in the right place. And then here I can choose to swap out these textures. So I'm not using the same one. Using the same one kind of defeats the purpose of why I'm doing this. I do want them to look similar. Okay, and I tend to use this square so I can see what's going on. But you can see here I have one set based on that map, right? And then this other one is over here. Let's just make this weird color, just so you can see what I'm doing. And then this basically is my setup. So if I had more materials, like maybe I could do one more, an MFC or something like that. And then I would have also, again, another lerp. So just to demonstrate, and there are restrictions to this. So even though this is really cool, I have 16 texture sample limits, meaning I can only load 16 textures. Literally what that means is, you know, my albedo is one texture, and this one's another, So it's this one, right? When you look at your master material, it will tell you how many I'm using. So right now it says texture samplers 10 out of 16, which, you know, I only have 3 sets, but it's probably reading some of my other nodes as actual texture samples, right? So then it's adding up to more than just 3. So here, again, that's kind of the drawback. Let's go back to my demo. Let's duplicate this. So what that means, what does that mean? What that means is you just can't put unlimited textures in here or texture sets because they won't work. I'm just gonna rename everything to C. You can see once you set up the first one, it's pretty easy afterward. But what you have to do is make sure the first one's very, very organized. Otherwise, you know, your mess is going to snowball, and you're going to have to pull it apart to try to fix it. And I'm just showing this part just so you can see that how to plug in a third material. Okay, so everything has been renamed. Let's change the group. This will be number 3, and this will be called C. Also, it helps to keep the names short. Because it just gets super confusing when you're looking at something that's very long. Normally, most of my materials are not using material sets because I don't think I really need it. But in this case, I think we do. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's do a function call, material function call. And it knew to load up C. And I'm just going to copy this, paste this. And then this would be A. Okay, so what will happen here is I need this to actually be A. This is B. And this will go into B. So this is how this is chained. Okay, now I need a different mask. Let's make sure I don't use the same one because I'll be very confused. Okay, so it's a different mask. And here's my 3 materials. And I have hit, let's save this. Then it was showing me how many texture sets I'm using. So I'm using 14 textures out of 16. Let's delete this and let's save this. So I don't have enough for another texture set. Let's go in here. You can see C is working. I happen to number them correctly this time. And let's just tint this another color. Don't see it showing up. So, it's right here. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty ugly looking. Okay, but you can just see the effect. Normally when I demonstrate, I don't. Okay, these don't have the handles. Okay, so none of these here. So I screwed up here when I made this one. They should actually be reading all these names here. Under saturation, brightness, contrast. So they're all reading, but it's not loading the actual name here. It actually should, especially when you name the channels. Let's do this. So when I'm confused, I simplify my material. So I only have material function A. Why is it not reading my albedo control names? It's not a big deal, but this should say, you know, brightness control or whatever. Like this material here. It says saturation, brightness, contrast. Sorry, I'm double checking myself. I'm actually not sure why, because it's set up exactly the same. Well, if I'm very confused, I could just remake it. I'll just call this control test. Set it all to white. Name them again. Yeah. Make sure contrast is at 0. Okay, so that worked. I don't know. So something was broken in my first one. I'm not sure what was. So I could delete this one. Anyway, I'm not going to fix all of it because that would take quite a while. When something doesn't work, usually I'll just remake it. I probably screwed. Oh, I see. Something up in here. Doesn't like, so it has to do with my naming. So let's set this to 20. It might be the priority. Okay, so it has to do with my naming. So if I set this to a different name, like test, under a different group, it's showing up. Okay, so it has to do with my group naming, which is what I'm saying. If you mess up your names, it just gets very confused. For whatever reason, it doesn't want to be in the same group. Anyway, I don't want to troubleshoot that. I think it just has to do with my numbering, that they are not all unique, right? So, you know, even though that is unique, let's set it to 100. Yeah, so that's all it was. You can see now when I change the order, it's much better. So normally when I'm doing this, I'm very meticulous when naming each one. And you can see my tiles have the same number, right? And then I have ones with the same number, and it just can't read it. So it wasn't reading this name. Why is that important? Because it's actually important. If I don't know what these values do, like I know this is saturation, brightness, contrast. If it just says RGB, like, well, I don't know what it's actually doing. Now that that's fixed, I can go back to my master and just reconnect this. And you can see my master is really simple. And this is a much more organized way of working. I can screw up each material function, isolate it. So that way it's easier to fix my mess or my misnaming. But again, I'm normally pretty careful with this, just going a little bit fast for the demo. Right. And then of course this probably looks strange because I was messing around with it. But we could apply this here. It doesn't actually have that applied. Which is, there, it takes a moment to load. Looks really wacky. But it does look like what I have in there. Now, once I have this, I can have this loaded.
Dial everything.
And dial everything and replace all my maps. So I have my 3 sets. They look funny. They're also not named right. I don't know what A, B, and C is exactly. But now I can come back here. You know, it's really wet. So bring down my spec and multiply my roughness. Right, already that looks better. This one should be my curvature control. You can reset this. And again, this doesn't have a naming, but you can see, you know, I can lighten these areas. Set this here. Sorry, I'm just being kind of dumb. There we are. So now it gives me like this kind of nice breakup, right? And it's just reading the surface. As far as how I generate the mask, it was all generated through Substance Painter, which I'll show you, but I don't think the file will load very well, which I think it would be interesting to see anyway with the problems I had with it. But now I have my setup and I can just dial it and tweak it until it looks good. It is tiley like this, but in my final one, not this weird demo one that I made, you won't notice it because it's actually more complicated. So if I show you what I actually ended up with here, select this and put this one here. And again, let's just close everything. Okay, so it took a moment. This is my master, really basic. Where it got complicated was in material function. So this one was pretty basic, my blood material. My rock one was actually more complex. So I have breakup within the rock area, right? Just to give it extra control. And if we look at my material instance here, you can see you don't really notice the tiling so much. There's also vines on it. You can see some stuff, but it's not as bad. So let's say in this complex one, here's my sand. I gotta be careful not to save any of this. Hold on. Because let's do it on this one. Because I'm about to ruin this. Okay, so let's look at this one here. So let's tint my sand. A color I can see. Let's do the rock because the rock's more obvious. So let's look at the rock area. And within that brown area, that's all my rock mask, right? And you can see like the gray areas, which is another material mask. And then in my rock, I have a sub-level control here. And I can tint it for you to see. Right? So this is my rock material. So it's quite complex. I have my rock base, and then I have a curvature that reads that. And I have the same thing going for my sand. So my sand, let's color it purple so we can see it. It says minor level breakup, but it's minor, but not really, because it's actually a big land piece. And then in this weird thing that I have going on, I could adjust my brightness. Right. So now you can see it's quite complex looking. My blood is much more simple, but you know, this is how I'm getting my breakup, which is tileable texture. And at a distance, when you're looking at this, you don't really see it looking so repetitious. You could do some breakup in the tiles. There are nodes for that, but it counts as a texture sample. So I couldn't fit all that in, right? So I have restrictions, and that's the only downside I think of it, is you can't put unlimited amount of textures. You can only limit to like 16. So that's about it for this, which was kind of a little bit slower, but
That was cool.
yeah, it kind of is much more organized way of working.
Cool. All right, do you want me to? I'm gonna finish this up then.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna close this. I want to be sure I don't actually save this, because I just made it a freaking mess.
Okay, so let's just wrap up what we were doing earlier, which is like what is it? It's like GAEA to Mixer to Unreal. So where we left off is I went to the Z plugins, pre-process current. It's already done. Now I could just come over here and put the percentage of the decimation. I'm going to go with the default settings and press decimate current. If you look up on the top right, it says 224 million polygons, right? So it's going to take a couple seconds here, and you'll see that will change from 26 to around 5 million or something. Give it a minute. There you go. But you can see the model looks almost exactly the same. It's hard to see any sort of difference. But if you look at the wireframe, you could see it's very simplified. Okay, so compare that to that, right? That just looks black. We got a new message here.
Thank you, Isam.
Yeah, that's very nice. Thanks, Isam. So, all right, so we got that, okay? So now what? So just so you guys know, while Tran was doing all of that, that was quite a bit, that's how long it took me to decimate it and import it into Unreal. That's it. It took forever, okay? So the model is in Unreal, so I'm not even going to try to import it live because it'll literally take 30 minutes, 20 minutes. So you can see there's your model decimated as nanite. And you see it has a ton of detail. One thing that I should note is when I brought it in originally, it was a little bit over displaced. So I actually just scaled it back down on Y, which does the equivalent of like under displacing it.
Yeah,
And
it's
here-
the same like what you're doing in Mudbox. Basically.
Exactly. And here you can see you have your water, your shoreline feel. It's a little too saturated looking for me, but whatever. It's you know, you could fine tune this all you want.
That looks pretty good though. The water looks super convincing.
The water looks great for what it is. Like it looks like there's dirty stuff in there that's
Yeah, it won't work if the character runs on it or if you get super close.
yeah,
But we're not having close-up water shots
exactly.
at that distance, which is probably more than what we see it at anyway.
Yeah.
It looks good.
I mean, you could probably get away with a close-up shot if you fine-tune it and do it, give it some love. I think you can get away with a lot. You'd have to just mess with it a lot more, but I think you could get away with a lot here. It looks pretty damn good. But yeah, that's it. That's the workflow. You can see really nice water, really easy. And it doesn't have to be water, but just there's your GAEA to mixer pipeline to get your environments to all.
Yeah, you can just have it be dirt.
Yeah.
But if you want water puddles, Megascans isn't really. I mean, they had like this one asset, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
you can see when you look at it here, it looks like the color looks crazy compared to the background, but when you see what the actual environment looks like, it is very
Ulichelewa
saturated.
tena.
So the colors are pretty red and crazy. So here's like, for example, one that was done in Mixer that I have to replace with a new ground. This is with our kind of older look. Right? So this has to be updated. Yeah. So that's exactly the same workflow right there. You can see the little puddles. So again, that's old lighting.
well, it's more like broken lighting.
Nitakuwa nimewarusha kwa nguvu sana. Sio
Rather than old, I'd say broken.
Yeah. And then the last thing, I guess, is in terms of this ground here, if you wanted to put that blue stuff on there, it'd be pretty simple. Just come over here. You have your decal actor. Right? Just move this up.
Oh, it's pointing.
Yeah, sideways.
Oh, that's weird. Usually it points down for me.
It might be because I don't know. I have no idea why. But okay, so there you go. And
That would probably be under content desert, I think.
it is, let's see.
Yeah, content, assets, desert, landscape. I organized it, which is,
There you go.
yeah. And these decals are simple, but they kind of, I don't know, work. At least I think so.
So I don't want them to touch the water. And again, this is a very stylized kind of environment. But so I don't want it in the water. However, you can see that if it goes in the water, it still looks kind of cool.
I think it looks cool if it's a little bit.
Yeah. Because the whole idea with this is that it's almost like a calcium deposit or some weird mineral. So
This is not even that crazy. Like that one image that you sent me of
yeah, we saw like some real world examples of stuff that does actually look like this. So this is not as alien as you would think. This actually is pretty tame.
it's actually super tame.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can search that up.
And we could just duplicate this again if you wanted to, just to put a little there. But anyway, you could see pretty cool workflow. Again, that was GAEA to build the original model, Mixer to do the texturing, Mudbox or ZBrush to apply the displacement back onto the model, exporting out the mesh with the Mixer displacement map. So So that has all the new mega scans details, and then bringing it in here, decimating it. It takes a while, not because it's difficult, but just because it's heavy file size. But there you go. You can see nice clean water. Well, not clean water, but nice simple water effects and ground. So did I struggle with ZBrush at the start? Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
It's-
well, when we started using ZBrush was a long time ago, which means the interface was much more simplistic. And over time, it's gotten more complex and it's gotten more awesome. It could do a lot of amazing stuff. Most people, most students that I talk to will say it takes a moment to actually do that.
yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to push anything, but most people find that taking the ZBrush course at Gnomon is super beneficial because you can teach yourself, and that's totally fine. But the one thing that makes ZBrush really hard is that it feels very hidden. So, meaning a lot of the like things that you can do are not like in your face. Like it's not like push this button and then there it is, right? There's a lot of hidden features. So you could take a course. But you know what's pretty good and probably cheap is the Gnomon workshop. So I know Maddie Spencer, hers is really good. So she has like one, and I think it's always updating. So Gnomon's constantly updating that workshop to newer versions because ZBrush is changing, and she's super good. Really great teacher, really clear, and that one gives you an overview. I don't think you need to know how to do everything in ZBrush, at least initially. You just got to get it to do what you want it to do, and then once you develop a comfort zone, you kind of expand from that comfort zone until you learn little bits here and there.
Yeah.
If you look at Maddie's video, it's an overview, and it could seem overwhelming, but don't look at it as I have to learn everything, but more like, oh, this is what it can do, and I'm just going to focus on learning one section of ZBrush, whatever you want to do, primarily sculpting, and then over time just kind of expand your knowledge. But it is super common for a lot of people to struggle with learning it because it's so complex. Yeah, so I grabbed a bunch of images. I just Googled them. You can see the kind of thing that we're doing is basically this kind of look, right? And that,
Not that crazy, but yes.
yeah, we're not even going this crazy. So you can see what that looks like. And this is real, right? So you can see how colorful it can get. So sometimes we look at this stuff and go, are we going nuts? But then we look at real references, and real references are,
Way crazier.
yeah, like here's this one. This one actually has kind of a similar-ish palette. I think we just made it more red. This was kind of blurry. But it has like some bluish areas and some orangey areas. And then when you look at some of these photos, and they are color corrected, actually check this one out. Look at that one. That one's,
It looks fake.
it looks so fake. There you go. It's probably pushed in the saturation, like it's been corrected to be more saturated, but you have to have some kind of basis that kind of looks like that in the beginning to make that work.
Hello. So yeah, that's it, guys. So we're done for today. If anybody has any questions, now's the time to ask. If not, we're going to wrap it up. But yeah, those are real photos.
Yeah, these are real.
Some stuff on this planet, if you never knew it was on Earth and they told you that these are photos from Mars, you would think like, wow, this was all worth it. But yeah.
Well, we live in California, and California has Death Valley. And if you ever visit, it's actually a really beautiful place to visit. You don't want to go there in summer though, because it's intensely hot. But it has a region that looks like this, and this is in Death Valley.
Yeah, that's when God was still figuring out how to texture. He was still not that good.
Yeah, but you can see this is real. And so if you think ours looks weird. This is way more weird. Imagine this palette,
Yeah.
right? But if you're ever in California, that is a great place to visit. They have a sand dune area that just looks like sand dunes, and then it's not very big, but it will change, and it's pretty amazing looking.
Yeah.
But that is Death Valley.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. So, thank you so much. If you want to follow us, you can follow us on Instagram.
Oops, Death Valley looks like ice cream. Sorry, I keep pressing it by accident.
You're still pressing it.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to unpress it.
So, you can follow us here. We appreciate you guys logging in and checking this out. And yes, Death Valley does look like ice cream. It actually does.
Yeah, getting hungry because I didn't eat yet.
But yeah, thank you guys so much. Very appreciated. If you guys are tuning in later, make sure you leave us a comment if you enjoy what we're doing. And we're hoping to wrap this whole thing up sooner than later. So
Yeah, we're pushing for the finish.
yeah,
Once we work out this redo, the next sequences should be
move
faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we rebuilt the whole entire level. So
Yeah.
new terrain, new environment. But
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks to Gnomon and Unreal and to our two animators that are helping us out, Christian and Joey. Thank you guys. And we'll see you guys around. So let me put this thing. We'll see you guys. Bye-bye.